Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. I am Johnny Talk Sports. And finally, college basketball, the second best sport in the world, only behind college football, begins this Friday night with some key matchups. Which this is an exciting point in the year where we get to find out which teams are good heading into the year and which teams are looking a little sluggish. So let's kind of recap last year's basketball season. I mean, very fitting that we ended last year with probably one of the greatest games in college basketball history. I mean, North Carolina is down by 3. Marcus Page makes just a crazy circus shot to tie the game. It looks like the game's going to go into overtime, but Chris Jenkins says nope as he hits a game-winning three-pointer at the buzzer to give Villanova the national championship. So let's get started with these. Now, these are the Johnny Talk Sports preseason top 25. So let's kind of see if these teams live up to their potential. At the number one team, I have Duke. I just think there's a lot of talent coming back for Duke, including Grayson Allen, who you either like him or you despise him. Kind of like Christian Laettner back in the 90s. And I just like the depth that Duke has this year. I mean, I think this team's looking way better than last year. They're obviously going to be an early favorite to win March Madness already. Number 2, Villanova. Now, normally a national champion really deserves to be number 1 going into the next season. But Villanova lost some talent. And they lost Archidiakono. They lost Ochefu. However, you still have Josh Hart and you still have Chris Jenkins, who hit the game-winning three-pointer to win the national championship. But I just think there's pressure on Villanova this year. Knowing that you won it last year, there's so much pressure to do it again. That's why most teams have a hard time winning back-to-back championships. Number 3, I got Kentucky. Now, it wouldn't really be a college basketball if John Calipari coached Kentucky teams not in at least the top 3 or 5. So that's kind of why they're there. I mean, they got Isaiah Briscoe coming back. They got they got depth this year. In Kentucky, I have a cough drop today, by the way. For those who didn't watch Sunday, I was kind of coughing a lot in Sunday's podcast. They got the depth this year. I mean, got Humphreys. They had an early exit in the tournament last year. I think they're going to recover this year. I think it's a fresh start. 4, North Carolina. You lost talent, kind of like Villanova and Kentucky, actually. You lost talent, but you still have some talent left from last year. And North Carolina they look to be fueled by fire this year, especially with the heartbreaking loss to the national championship. It wouldn't surprise me if North Carolina actually made it back to the championship. Number 5, I like Wisconsin. Now, going into this season, Wisconsin is probably the most talented roster that's returning this year. When you got Nigel Hayes coming back, you got Bronson Koenig coming back. You have talent from the Final Four 2 years ago. And you have Ethan Happ coming back, who's probably one of the most underrated players in college basketball. Number 6, Kansas. Now, Kansas, though, they're one of the teams where you don't know if they're going to win. Kansas can do one of two things. They can either lose in the second round of the tournament, or they can go to the Final Four and possibly win the whole thing. There's no in between for Kansas. 7, Oregon. Now, Oregon made a run at the championship last year. They had a number 1 seed in the tournament. They basically dominated the Pac-12 tournament. 8, Virginia. Virginia, they lost some talent, but Virginia always builds back up. 9, Arizona. Kind of the same thing. I mean, you still got talented players left, but they had an early exit last in the tournament. As did Michigan State at number 10 in my rankings. Number 11, Louisville. Now, those two teams, they're reloading. 12, Maryland, they're kind of reloading, but you still got the leadership of Melo Trimble coming back. One of my favorite players to watch this year will be Melo Trimble. In fact, my top 5 players to watch this year will be announced at the end. 13, Xavier. 14, Gonzaga. 15, Indiana. 16, UConn. 17, Iowa State. 18, Purdue. 19, UCLA. Number 20, surprisingly, Creighton. I mean, many people are really hyped on the Blue Jays this season, especially with the talent they have of Kobe Parsons, or Kobe Paras. 21, Cincinnati. I mean, I really hope Cincinnati has a great season this year. I mean, they got their hearts broken in the first round of the tournament last year. Probably one of the most heartbreaking endings you'll ever see. So I really hope they make it far this year in the tournament. 22, St. Mary's. 23, Florida State. I mean, Florida State, they're one of the teams this year that may prove some people wrong. Although, are we really hyping up Florida State? It's kind of too late to judge teams right now. So we'll see. 24, Texas A&M. This was not a biased pick. I mean, Texas A&M did lose Alex Caruso, Daniel House, Jalen Jones. But you still got a solid team coming back. I mean, you got Tyler Davis. You got DJ Hogue. You got Admon Gilder. Tony Trochin-Morelos. I honestly think Texas A&M could make a run for the Elite Eight this year. Number 25, Dayton. Now Dayton, the last 3 years, they've been a great, solid team the last 2 or 3 years. I mean, Dayton's really changed their basketball program around, and I like them to start in the top 25. Well, they should, at least in my book, start in the top 25. So my 5 players to watch in college basketball this year. Melo Trimble. Grayson Allen. Surprisingly, watch Tyler Davis and DJ Hogue. So I think DJ Hogue's really going to improve his three-point shooting this year for Texas A&M. Let's see. Yeah, just watch the Michigan State team as a whole. Because Izzo's team is reloading this year. Kind of what I said earlier in the podcast. In fact, some teams to watch now. Teams to keep an eye on this year, I would keep an eye on Maryland. I would also keep an eye on Creighton, because I think they can make some noise in the Big East. Keep your eyes out on Texas A&M, of course, because they've got the talent coming back from last year's Sweet 16 team. You may not have the senior leadership this year, but you got the youth that's more experienced now. Watch Gonzaga, because their team is kind of reloading this year. They seem to make the tournament every year because they're in an easy conference. All right. So it's time for my favorite part of this podcast that I've been looking forward to. Actually, today's probably not going to be a podcast, so it's not longer than 15 minutes. But here we go. Let's give it a nice drum roll. My first team making the Final Four this year is Duke. This is kind of a surprising pick for most people. Others kind of expected. I just think Duke, I just feel like if they get on the right side of the bracket again this year, kind of what they did 2 years ago, they could win the whole thing. That could be the only reason why Duke won it all, because they didn't have to play Kentucky, they didn't have to play Kansas, they didn't have to play Wisconsin the championship game. My second team making the Final Four is Kansas. Now, Kansas is fueled by fire this year, especially with their heartbreaking loss to Villanova, who ended up winning the whole tournament. Because Kansas could have won the whole thing last year. They kind of slipped up against Villanova. It took for them to redeem themselves this year. My third team making the Final Four. Bold prediction, but the Wisconsin Badgers. See, the experience with the Wisconsin Badgers. See, they got experience at coming back this year. And I like that to at least make the Final Four. And your fourth and final team making the Final Four is Another bold prediction. Louisville. See, history's kind of going to repeat itself this year. Remember Syracuse making the Final Four last year? The year before that, they were ineligible in the tournament because of NCAA sanctions. Last year, Louisville could not participate in the tournament because of NCAA scandals and accusations and violations. But this year, now that they're eligible, they will storm their way to the Final Four and they will shock the college basketball world. But not me, because I'm telling you that right now. So now we have Duke and Kansas playing in the first part in one part of the Final Four, and we got Wisconsin versus Louisville in the other. And winning that part of the Duke and Kansas will be the Duke Blue Devils. They're going to beat Kansas by about 5 points. Most people will expect them to win by about 12 points, but only be 5. So Duke goes to the championship game. So now we've got Wisconsin versus Louisville in the two bold predictions. And winning that will be Wisconsin. Again, with the experience of Hayes and Koenig. That leads a Duke and Wisconsin rematch from the championship matchup 2 years ago. And for the second time around in this Duke versus Wisconsin matchup, Wisconsin gets their revenge as your 2016-17 college basketball champions will be the Wisconsin Badgers. You have heard it here first. That is going to do it. Like and subscribe to the channel. Comment below who you think is going to win March Madness this year, or at least who your preseason Final Four is, and then your national champion. I promise this is going to be going away pretty soon. I hope so, at least. And we like and subscribe to the channel. Share the video with your friends. Follow me on Twitter at JB Talk Sports. That is all I have for you today. Have a good day, everybody. I'll see you next time.